Regrets, past, present, and future, can haunt adults and teens alike. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and today we're very excited to have with us director Vadim Perelman to discuss his new film, Life Before Her Eyes. Remember, if you dig these podcasts, don't forget to check out Creative Screenwriting Magazine on newsstands now. You could purchase it at Barnes & Noble, Borders, or at your local newsstand in the United States, Canada, and Western Europe. To find out more about what's in our latest issue, visit www.creativescreenwriting.com. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage as I introduce director Vadim Perelman to discuss his new film, Life Before Her Eyes.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
So Vadim, going way back to your childhood, you led quite the dramatic childhood. You battled anti-Semitism growing up in the Ukraine, and after your father died in a car accident, you made the decision that it was time for you and your mother to move. Talk about being so young at that time and just knowing that you wanted to get out and start like a new chapter in your life.
Well, yeah, I mean, for us, it was just, I think I was too young to understand exactly what we were undertaking, just by leaving with not knowing any language except Russian and taking off into the unknown. For me, it was just an adventure. I was 14 years old, so, at that time it was kind of, the world was open to me, and my mother was too shell-shocked to even protest.
You left and ended up in Italy and Canada, and from what I know of kind of your teenage years, you were almost like a bit of a petty thief at times. Is that correct?
No, that came later. I was still kind of innocent at the time. I was actually a homeless kid in Rome. My mother lived outside of Rome, about 45 minutes, and because I held down two jobs, quite often, I missed the last train, so I had to stay in the parks and just wander around Rome, the Trevi Fountain.
So were you the petty thief in Canada?
Yeah, I became a petty thief. I graduated to that.
You graduated to that? So
I object the petty thing. I think I was.
Really, what was your biggest score?
No, I don't think the statute of limitations.
Well, so to my knowledge, at some point you were busted for something, you were almost deported, and to please correct me if I'm wrong. And
creative screenwriting.
Yes. We're getting to the screenwriting. But somehow you came across film as a passion, and it was like another changing point in your life. Is that right? Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I came quite late. I was in university in Canada, and in my second year of physics. And they showed us, I took an easy art selective course, which is like film theory 101. And they showed us a film, it was a documentary film, making of Fiddler on the Roof. And at that time, it was my first window into filmmaking. And I saw Norman Jewison kind of behind the scenes. This is before any of those things were quite popular, so I didn't really know how films were made or who made them and how and why. And seeing him, I really wanted to do that. I wanted to create a world. I wanted to affect people, and it really had one of those eureka moments where I decided this is what I wanted to do.
And is that when you went to the Ryerson School of Image Arts?
Yeah.
Okay.
At that point, I actually, it took me a year to get into that place. It's very hard to get into. And what I did is I went to the library and just read film books for about a year until my application came through.
But once you got in, to my knowledge, you didn't stay. You dropped out. Is that true?
Yeah, a year and a half I spent there, and it was a 4-year program. And I just got impatient. I just wanted to get to it and do it.
Which is great. I mean, to my knowledge, you then started Canned Films, your own production company.
Yes.
And you started doing commercials and music videos.
Yeah, on a very, very low. That was petty filmmaking.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm really interested in that because a lot of our listeners to our podcast and folks in the audience, like they've done small works like that too. I mean, what was it like to make a name for yourself? Really, probably not having much of a body of work under your belt.
Well, in Canada, we basically did very, very low budget music videos. I wasn't doing commercials yet, and that was about a couple of years. Then I became an editor of music videos, and got a bit of a name doing that. And then I moved to LA. And here I edited for about 3 months, and I got lucky with my first commercial, which kind of fired off that career. And
you mean directing? So you directed your first commercial after
commercial,
working as an editor. That's great.
Exactly. And it became kind of a gig for about 15 years. I still do them, actually. And they're great because they're a great avenue to learn. They're a great forum to try different things, and also they allow me the financial freedom to wait for the good films, to do the good films.
There had been a lot of solicitations, to my knowledge, of people that wanted you to make films, and you were really kind of waiting to pick almost the perfect project for your first film. Talk about, is that true, or were there offers made that you declined? What was that like?
Actually, there were offers made that I would have done, and thank God I didn't, because they were quite lowbrow comedies and horror films and so on. There's nothing wrong with that, I think, but I was quite lucky to come to the point where I found House of Sand and Fog in a bookstore, and I just bought the book. And
you found it at an airport, right?
Yeah, and it was actually my first trip back to Rome. I was doing a commercial, so I kind of closed the circle of my life there, and it was a gift at the end of that circle.
So never pack a book again for the rest of your life. Just see what the bookshop at the airport has to offer, and you'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
When you read that book, I mean, it's about the immigration experience to an extent. How did it affect you or remind you of your own experience coming to America?
Well, quite a bit. I think that's what I responded to. My phone's going off. That's what I responded to, and I really there was a lot of parallels in my life of that book, and I just it really spoke to me.
So, as a person that has no track record in film, how did you go about attaining the rights to House of Sand and Fog?
I called the author, and
really just called up.
I just
Andre
called him,
DeBose,
just found him and called him, and he's had numerous offers for the book, for the rights to the book, and thankfully he believed in me. And after I told him how I got here to this point, kind of what I'm telling you guys now, and he was trusting enough to give me the rights, which is an incredible thing for me.
Now, I ask this respectfully. I mean, film school dropout, but definitely a lot of experience cutting music videos, short-form narratives. What was your experience on writing that, your first screenplay, and just knowing where to start? Because that's a tough adaptation, that book.
It was very scary, actually, and there was a writer who attempted it before, who I hired, and I didn't really like what he did, so I decided to do it myself, and I just kind of started over and did it myself.
How many hours a day would you write when you would write?
I wrote all the time. It was a very quick process. I wrote it in almost like less than 3 weeks, the script.
Really?
Yeah.
And so
that was my first attempt at a script. I didn't know you were supposed to write longer.
That's incredible. I mean, a lot of people, when they have a work to adapt, they outline. Was that the first part of your process, outlining the book?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, what I did is usually my process is index cards. I'll go through the book and I'll underline all the parts that I feel should be the scenes. I'll write scene in the margins of the book, and then I do a corkboard or a wall, and I'll just do scenes. And in House Sand and Fog, it was color-coded. It was blue for Bronny, red for Kathy, cards. And on each card, I would write out what happens in the scene. And because it was alternating kind of structure, one to the other, I would draw an up arrow or a down arrow, depending on their emotional state, on each card. And then that way I could feel the flow of the whole film and match the two.
There's an old adage, nothing's truly written, things are rewritten. What was your rewrite process like after 3 weeks?
I didn't.
Really? No rewriting?
No.
Wow.
It was a strange thing. I've written, about 4 scripts since then, and I've always read fast, but that thing just came out like, it was a very strange process.
Yeah, I mean, take 4 months to write. Write a script each month. There you go. You could be onto something.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I mean, House of Sand and Fog is a tough thing to write because one of the interesting things about it is all the characters have these moral dilemmas in which, by the end of the film, no one's truly right. How difficult was that for you to manage? Because it really has an ensemble feel to it.
Yeah, the hardest part of that adaptation, and I think the hardest part for the book author to do was to keep the sympathies equal. And quite often, they're not. I mean, some of you who have seen the film probably side with one side or the other, but my biggest goal was to keep it as even as possible so that at the end you don't know who the protagonist is, who the antagonist is.
I usually ask writers, what do you do when you encounter writer's block? But when you're cranking it 3 weeks, did you get it?
Not that one. Not on that one. No.
So on other projects, what do you do to battle writer's block?
I just don't write for the time. I don't think.
That's a good answer.
Sitting there staring at a blank page is not going to help. So you just go and do something else, and then it comes in a burst after that. For me, at least, I've been lucky.
It's always tough for filmmakers to get their first project on film off the ground. Obviously, you have a good past as commercials and music videos. How hard was House of Fog and Sand to set up and get a budget for, with you as director?
Well, actually, it wasn't, because the actors really responded to the script right away. And
was it difficult for you to get somebody like Ben Kingsley attached? You just went through agents? Or?
No, it was very lucky. I just gave it to ICM and his agent, Chris Andrews, still his agent, and he loved it. He called me and said, "I want to do it," and then we met. And it was one of those. It was one of those stories that I think is almost too good to be true. That the making of that movie, because now I found out it's not that easy, to get films made. I thought exactly I can write it in 2 weeks, and then I can get it made in 3 weeks. It was one of those things.
You'll do 2 movies a year for the rest of your life, right now.
Yeah.
What was the budget you were able to raise for House of Sand and Fog?
Well, 15, and then ended up being about 15 and a half by the end.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How long was your shoot schedule?
50 days.
50?
50, yeah.
Wow, that's great. What was your toughest scene that you found, on set? As both a writer and director, you also have the opportunity to rewrite. Was there something that during production you found yourself rewriting or reworking?
Well, I kind of, the wedding scene was tough just from a logistics standpoint. I think the hardest scene for me to shoot as a director, because I didn't quite have enough experience with having a lot of people in one room and all the lines, and I was very confused about that, because in commercials you don't have that. Was the scene where she's being evicted, and I had all these people crossing and standing in the living room, and I got completely lost before lunch. So I sat down at lunch and just drew a diagram, and that was the hardest one. But the emotional scenes were quite hard.
Did you find yourself rewriting?
No, I did a little bit. I was always trying to come up with a better ending, I think, and then finally ended up with the ending that was in the first place. But it was the studio always pushed me for can we make it less tragic? Can we make it less? And I said, listen, if we're making a comedy, would you say, can we make it less funny?
Yeah.
So we're making a tragedy here.
Yeah. Nothing like less tragic. It's your first film. You won the National Board of Review Prize for Best Debut Director on this film. Coming off of it, what was one of the most important things that you think you learned that helped you maybe in preparation to direct this film?
I think I learned just to not be cynical when you're taking on projects. I learned, actually, one of the films that was really instrumental in that was the same year I did House, Sand and Fog. There was a documentary called My Architect, and just an amazing story if you guys don't know about it. But this guy, Louis Kahn, was probably one of the most brilliant architects of our age, like Frank Lloyd Wright kind of level architect. He only made 6 or 7 buildings in his whole career, and they're brilliant buildings. And they're interviewing I.M. Pei, in this documentary, and he said, I have built thousands of buildings, projects, billions of dollars, and I would trade them all for 6 of his buildings. And I thought, and I was watching that, and I had tears in my eyes at that point, and I said, listen, this guy, his life was not for nothing, and frankly, if I make 5 movies in my whole life, I'd be very happy if they're all good.
Going for the Terrence Malick, are we? Very good. When did you first become aware of Laura Kosciuszko's novel, Life Before Her Eyes?
Right around House, Sand and Fog, it was sent to me, and I read it, and I got the rights for it. And then I was going to the 13 premiere, actually, almost shortly after that. And I saw Evan, Rachel Wood, and she was 15 at the time. So she was sitting with her mother at this after-party thing. And I said, I have a part for you. And so she was kind of the first. She was a cornerstone. And she goes, okay. And we, she's a 15-year-old girl. And she, and then since, now she was 19 when she actually ended up filming it.
Talk about your decision not to write the screenplay if you got the book rights. When did Emil Stern, the screenwriter, come into play?
I tried. I tried the same process. I put it all on index cards, and I tried, but I realized I couldn't actually write this one because I didn't have enough brains. It was not that kind of brain. The thing was, I'm more of an emotional writer, and I'm more linear, and this was very clockwork-like, convoluted. It's almost like an Escher etching, and I felt
well, structure's very important for a film like this.
Yeah, and also the doling out of clues, the balance between characters. It was all very intellectual in a way that my brain didn't quite work at the time. So what I did is Emil had written, I think, a spec script only by that time.
Yeah, because this is his first produced film, and he has another film coming out later this
Tenderness,
year.
with Russell Crowe. And but he wrote the script for Time's Arrow, Martin Amos's, which is another mind fuck, if you pardon me. But it was like a completely backwards story told backwards, and if you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. So seeing that, I said, well, he can definitely solve the technical part of it, and then maybe I can infuse it with emotional. But I actually ended up not having to. He also has both of this. Yeah, he did an amazing job, I thought.
What was it like for you to give another writer notes? Was that tough for you? Did you need any important changes that you had him go back to the drawing board for?
Yeah, I didn't give him very major notes, though. I kind of gave him my cards, and I said, do this, and here's some words. I gave him the book that I underlined, and I said, if you feel like these are the points that I think we should make, and if you feel like if you can work them in, great. If you can't, don't. I think he did an amazing job all on his own. He really did. He's a very brilliant writer and a great guy.
Talk about some of the differences between the novel and the screenplay adaptation.
The novel was, I don't know if anybody's read it, but Laura Kosicki was a poet before she started writing prose. And so it was extremely evocative, extremely lyrical, and filled with metaphor and imagery. And she really... The difficult thing was that quite often in the book, you couldn't tell which Diana she was talking about, because she would just say Diana, or the blonde girl, or the blonde woman, So it was, the difficult part of it was in the visual sense, you didn't have that trick that you could do. So you had to kind of rework the way you built those people and the reveals of them and so on.
As you just said, it's tough to map out the difference between the past tense and the future tense in this film, with 15 years separating them. Did you guys kind of draw a map as part of the outlining process to keep track? Because obviously on film you need to know which version of Diana you're talking about, the older woman or the younger woman.
Yeah, no, in the script it pretty much made that clear. The map was really, I don't know if it may be too subtle, but there's a deterioration of her character that happens, kind of both. It has to do with, the other Diana laying there dying,
Well, and you also have your visuals kind of the food rotting on the table and stuff like that, so you did a really good job of matching that with the visuals. You always get great performances out of actors. Talk about your process for working with actors. Did you use a rehearsal period?
I don't like to rehearse, actually. The only things that I rehearsed was the bathroom scene, but only for movement. We kind of taped it off and just see where I'm going to put them, how it's going to work with the mirrors, that kind of thing. But I don't like for actors to act in rehearsal. I don't think it's a good process. For good actors, it's just kind of, that's take one wasted without being filmed, for me. And I'd rather, and I'm always pissed off afterwards. I'm always like, oh, why did we just do this? I could have filmed it, And because there's, the good actors, they're so good, they just, boom, they give it to you right there and then. Kingsley, Jennifer, Uma, Evan, they're there, mostly in the first take. And it feels like a waste to okay, now play the part, in a fluorescently lit room, it's not really conducive. You almost get sickened of the material. It's a travesty to the material, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, so I can see that keeping it fresh on set. What was your budget and schedule on this film?
$13 million. It was less, actually, and we filmed it in 40 days. So it was quite a bit less.
On this one, what was your toughest directorial challenge?
I think just because it was not only was the script so out of order, but compounded with the shooting being out of order. It was really tough to keep the whole thing together, just in my brain, the continuity of character and what happens. So I had to every day, again, draw little diagrams as far as that.
The cinematography in this film was astounding. I mean, there's a beautiful dreamlike feel. Talk about some of the interesting things that you guys did just to get that look on film, because it's almost hyper-real, but it's at the same time very colorful and distinct.
Well, what's interesting about it is that a lot of people mistake cinematography for art direction for cinematography. I think that, Pavel didn't really do anything different, even between two periods. It was the same film stock, almost the same lighting style. it's Maya Javan, who's my production designer, who really had a lot. And Pavel, don't get me wrong, he did an amazing job, but Maya really had a lot to do with keeping the styles distinct, the time periods distinct.
But even the outdoor stuff was very distinct.
Yeah, all those flowers were fake, by the way. It's cool. They were. We had the most amazing greens guy in New York.
The forest when she's running through in the beginning, and then again at night, and
that was a very lucky thing there, because I never thought of there being rain in that forest. When I wrote it, and we showed up that day, and we were supposed to shoot all night, and it was cold, and it started pouring rain on us. You can't really tell because we're not really lighting in the forest, so it was. Kind of a lucky accident, because at first I thought we'd have to call it a day, and then Uma said, "No, let me out there," and I think it turned out to be great with the whole water motif. It ended up being fortuitous.
Again, you're in an ensemble piece. One of the distinctive characters that kind of sets himself apart, other than the girls, is the science teacher. And he has this very, because you see him killed in the beginning, and in the flashbacks, he has a very kind of ghost-like presence. Talk about.
I think they all do.
Definitely. Yeah. Talk about getting that performance.
Except for Maureen. Maureen is probably the most real person out of the whole movie. Her friend. But even Evan, I think, her character is very much ghost-like. At least that's the way she played it.
How would you direct that? I mean, how do you get those performances?
I don't.
No?
No,
Interesting.
I don't get performances. They give me performances.
Good. I like that answer. For our podcast listeners, we're getting into a spoiler alert here about this film. There's a whole genre of films like this, going all the way back to the Twilight Zone occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, Angel Heart, Jacob's Ladder, Sixth Sense, a little bit of the others. It's obviously been in literature well before film. What's it like to kind of manage the timelines of this character that, basically by the end of the film, you realize the entire film is a flash in her dying moments? You talked earlier about the difficulties of managing clues and stuff like that. Did that present a problem as you were going forward to kind of add your direction onto the stuff in the script?
I think it presented more of a problem in the editing, more of a challenge in the editing, because that's where you really start modulating the two. During the shooting, you're just getting the scenes down, and in the writing, Emile, the script is actually well worth reading because it's almost completely different structure than this. We ended up in the edit just finding a whole new way of telling this.
Please talk about that. What was the different structure?
She says, first of all, in the book and in the script, she says, "Kill her." She doesn't say, "Kill me, Evan," which is a completely big twist. And it's the kill her scene is at the very beginning of the film. So the first time you're in the bathroom, it goes all the way to that.
So she asks the gunman to kill Maureen, and he kills her. He kills Evan instead.
Yes, exactly. And nevertheless, he shoots her in a very ironic kind of way. And I thought that was, I don't know. I had a lot of pushback from the actors and from Emile on this, but I really felt strongly that we can't do that.
Well, it's interesting because now the whole film is like a sacrifice.
Yeah,
by changing it.
And Evan managed to do the kill her part where she wasn't reprehensible in doing that, on the screen. But I still felt that a lot of people, me probably included, would come out of this saying, well, it was kind of an esoteric exercise in whatever. It didn't feel, it felt like you would sit through the whole film and saying, so what about this girl? And it's too intellectual to then start justifying it and saying, well, it's because there was, because we're just animals and plants, and it's just a normal survival kind of instinct for all of us because we're young, to be able to survive. I mean, you never fault a plant for shading another plant while reaching for the sun. You don't say, oh, that plant is evil, And so but we're sentient human beings, with the cerebral cortex. So I feel that I really strongly at some point felt that was the way to go.
That's a great change. You also had a beautiful motif of water. Obviously, as she's lying there in her dying moments in the bathroom, she's seeing the sink that was shot out, spray all over the place. Yeah. And then throughout the movie, there's the pool, there's the bathtub, there's the sprinklers, the impending storm that's going to come, and obviously the rain. Could you talk about just how much of that was on the page and how much of that was also things that you were kind of infusing directorially?
Well, the sprinklers actually, no, it was all on the page. Yeah, sprinklers were on the page too. It was all about, they were walking through the sprinklers in the script, and I think even in the book. The water was a big deal because she's in that element as she's laying there. So her future has echoes of that, And that's this whole thing is really about echoes and clues. And it's well worth seeing a second time, because I was talking to a critic today, did a phone interview with him, who said he got it right away as soon as She's Not There played, the Zombies song. I said, wow, that's pretty early. But, apparently he did. So it's not a test. I mean, the way I look at this film is it's not when you get it, or even if you get it at all. It's not a twist movie that's just there supporting this twist. More, I feel that, we've succeeded in making it if you get emotionally involved with these characters in some way and are entertained, hopefully, So for me, this isn't a class.
Talk about the importance of the cougar imagery, because they mention a cougar a lot. It's on television. It's her favorite picture in the book.
It's completely random, actually. It totally is. Yeah,
really? Because it appears 4 times.
No. I mean, the choice of cougar is random.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the echoes obviously are. But it was no matter of, there's a cougar in the cage in his room, which is, I think, the first. That's where it all draws from, and also the high school team being called the Cougars. It's on the back of the guy's jacket, and then, Uma, I guess you can call a cougar to a certain extent. And
but actually, the decision to put it in her boyfriend's apartment, it was very strange.
Well, that was in the book, and we had the same question asked in Dallas just now. Eva and I did like a panel there, and I didn't even think it was strange, because when I was growing up, a petty thief, in my element, we had all kinds of weird dudes like that. There was a guy with a wolf. I mean, we all know guys with like giant snakes and stuff like that. So yeah, cougar. It was a random thing that actually the studio asked me why, and I said, I don't know. Let's just keep it in. There's no profound meaning to it.
I think you could be starting a trend. Talk about the one part of the movie that really you just look at as like kind of creepy, like good old creepy daughter Emma. What is Emma's deal?
Well, Emma is an abortion.
Well, right.
That's her deal. She's dead. She's never existed.
Her concept of always hiding, is it hiding from life? Is it hiding out?
Yeah, she's being withdrawn. She's going away. She's disappearing.
Gotcha.
Dying.
Gotcha.
Did you guys get that? No. Oh well.
A couple of you.
Yeah. I mean, the cross, she's dead. No, Evan getting an abortion.
There's also hints, like, when Uma Thurman is teaching the art history class, and she talks about Jacob wrestling the angels, getting into the dream state, and of course
is it real or imagined?
Yeah,
and all those clues are.
Because she repeats the sentence. There's no demarcation between real and imagined.
Yeah.
So those were like interesting clues too. That I guess
they're everywhere. They're almost in every scene, and they kind of have a cumulative effect, I guess. Yeah, I hope.
Cool. Let's open it up to the crowd for a few questions. Right there, you, sir, in the second row. Great question. Did you shoot it as 2 different films? The younger actor is part of the film first, and then Uma Thurman's part of the film second?
Yeah, that was exactly our order. And we ended the girls' scenes with the bathroom scene. We'd spent 3 days on the bathroom set, and that's the only set we built, because it had to hold water.
Great. Another question right there, you, sir, in the yellow striped shirt. Question was the screenwriter involved in the film writing process during the editing?
The editing or the production?
During editing, when you were restructuring?
There was no rewriting. Oh, you mean the restructuring process? No. No, he's in Australia, which helped.
well, actually...
I'm kidding. I would have been really pissed off if I was that screenwriter. No, it was we just went into the room, me and the editor, and basically did the work. And this film has had a lot of versions. The version we showed in Toronto was different. The version we showed some test screening is different. I think.
Wait, get into that for a second. This is fascinating. Why did you change stuff after Toronto?
It was too long, I think. Still,
because right now it's like a lean 90 minutes.
It's 90 minutes, like a comedy.
What was it? That's right. Less tragedy. That's why they wanted it.
Exactly.
So what was it in Toronto? What was that runtime?
Toronto was a little bit over. 145 or something like that. But it just felt, this thing is so, it's a real editor's movie in a strange way, and it's so abstract in a way that you could have almost thrown the scenes and picked them up again, and they would have sometimes made sense, So it was very tempting to keep screwing around with it, and because I had time and the studio didn't seem to mind. I kept screwing around with it, and I think I really truly feel right now that this is the best it could be.
What did the screenwriter think of the changes? What did Emil think?
He liked it. He liked it in Toronto, too.
Okay.
Yeah. He
Cool.
just didn't like that one thing about the kill her part. That was
Gotcha. Another question. How long was the editing
a
process?
long time, because we shot in 2006. We finished in October of 2006. So I guess a year, over a year. Which was the same with House, Sand and Fog, actually, strangely. It just, some reason I added a long time.
You, sir, all the way on the aisle. Could you talk about your collaboration with James Horner and your stylistic differences in the second film here?
You know, this one is a woman. This is a film filled with women. So, and it all comes from James. I mean, we talked about it very, very theoretically and kind of just... James is probably my closest collaborator, strangely, and we're always incredibly on the same page. You know, I never dictate to him, this is what you should do, make it like this here and like that there. I just give it to him, and he does an amazing job, and then I just sit back in awe. I really do. Yeah, so my collaboration with him is probably my most valued collaboration with all, you know, him and Maya Javan, I would say, who's my production designer.
Right there, you, ma'am. She was asking about the relation of the heart being the strongest muscle in the film as discussed. What was the heart of this project that when you first came across it, really you knew you wanted to work on it?
In book form? Yeah, well, I think it was the ending. I think in the book, the ending was much more ambiguous, and it ended with Diana. I think I still don't understand what happened to Diana in the book. I think she's in a coma. That's my guess in the book, and she's dreaming all that. It's a really cool book, by the way. I can't recommend it. It's an amazing book. It's a great read, and the heart of it was the young girl, the life that could have been. It was a real affirmation and a real lament for something that's so precious, you know, to all of us. And here it was just like snuffed out, like somebody ripping a flower out of the earth. And how, as she lay dying, literally, it's that the little tremors of her imagination telling us the story of the past and the future.
What did the novelist Laura Kosicki think of your film?
She loved it. She really did. I was actually really pleasantly surprised.
Had she read the script or anything like that?
No. She just came for one day of the shooting. She lives in Detroit, and she loved the film. She said it was really, it was very complimentary.
That's great.
Yeah.
You, sir, right there in the blue. Where were you in the process of filmmaking when you heard about the Virginia Tech massacre, and how did that affect you?
I was in post for that, but it was happening all the time when we were shooting. Montreal happened then. The Amish shooting happened. The Amish shooting happened exactly the day that we started shooting the bathroom scene with the two girls. And I have a picture of me, a photo of me standing in that bathroom with a headline, like a big headline from the newspaper that's one of those tabloid papers that says, "Girl begged killer to kill her first," which is what happened in the Amish shooting. And it's one of those really bizarre things. As I'm shooting that scene, that's on the front page of the newspaper. So, I'm actually quite shocked how many people that have seen the film don't really talk about that, about the shootings and why and so on. Not that I didn't make Elephant, so it's not really. No, believe me, it's a good film. That it's not a trying to understand the characters behind and what makes a person do that and so on. I think, but I'm still very surprised that that's not written about more.
On the aisle, you, ma'am. Why do you think the vision of the future that she's having is a disaster and therefore affecting the ending? Why couldn't she have had a happy future?
Well, it starts out fairly happy. The first scene, really. I wish I would have done a little bit more of that. I think it's a disaster because she is laying there. Her whole imagination takes place from the moment that the bullets hit her chest to the time where her eyes close in the water. That is the time span of this movie. For us, that's when she goes forward and backwards in her recollections and imagination. And her imagination is faltering. She's losing the ability to imagine, and that has the effect on what's happening in the dream, essentially, narratively, by making her marriage fall apart, the daughter running away, and just everything goes to shit, essentially, as she loses the ability to imagine, and the brain is dying. And that's where the decay starts of the fruit and birds and all that stuff.
Right there, you, sir, in the middle. Could you talk about the past of your mother being shell-shocked after, your father's untimely death in a car accident, and Uma Thurman in this film being shell-shocked by the events? Was that something that resonated for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. Yeah, it was. She was haunted just the same way she probably still is to this day. And Uma was haunted by that event, supposedly.
Another question. School shootings can be really heavy. What was your approach for kind of getting into it, and how did the actors take it, dealing with something that's a really, terrible part of our society?
Well, the actors did. I think they took it in stride because they're pros and that they're amazing actors, both of those girls, and the shooter guys. Actually, the sweetest guy you ever meet in your life. And the way I approached it on a simple level, because that scene outside the school was actually a big deal for us to shoot that on this budget. And we had 5 cameras set up, and I just covered it documentary style. And if you see some of the outtakes, which I'll have on DVD, or like set photos, things like that, you will see these extras that I never said a word to, never directed them, acting in such a documentary way, in such an incredible way. I was shocked just to see the level of emotion that they rose. Usually extras are like, standing in the back. These guys were just like going full on, and not in a corny way. They just did an amazing job. They were all like leading actors out there. And what helped that, I think, is the fact that I set the scene. I had big giant fans for no reason whatsoever, just except to make noise. Those big fans, and I just threw a bunch of papers in it. I wanted like homework flying all the way through the scene, and smoke. No reason at all, again, because why should there be smoke or wind?
Wasn't there a helicopter sound on your soundtrack outside?
Yeah, and then we put a helicopter sound on it later. And what I did, actually, was Maya's, again, my production designer, who's my closest collaborator. It was her idea. It was to take photos of Columbine. And I kind of feel a little weird about that, just using it that way, now that I think about it. But at that point, it really helped, was taking and laminating these newsreel photos of the parents, of the kids, the shell-shocked, people, and handing them out to the extras before they would shoot. So they would just pass them on from one to the other and look at these faces, and they did it. They did an amazing job.
And some of the imagery of like the kids coming out the window and being helped like by the police, that was right out of Columbine too.
Yeah, it was the kids out there.
Right there. Sorry, on the aisle, you? Question was in regards to the female focus of the film and how some of the male characters are a bit weaker sometimes, and obviously villainous in some cases too. Is this kind of from your own life and your view of your mother, or talk about managing that tone?
It's not conscious, whatever it is. I don't really feel that I have some axe to grind. No, it's not that way. But I don't think the husband was villainous in any way. Yeah, he didn't even exist.
I meant the shooter. I'm sorry, I meant the shooter, obviously. Oh. And sorry, yeah. No, the husband wasn't.
No, the shooter was, he was villainous. Yeah.
One or two last questions right there. You, sir, in the gray. What role did Molly Price symbolize for you?
Yeah, well, actually, Molly was Diana's mother. She's the one that screamed Diana. The mother of the other girl was the one that came in when Diana was crying there on the counter and said, and there was another great line that Emile wrote, she didn't know, I didn't know what the human condition was. She goes, "You will soon." She says to Diana, and the human condition, as we all know, is death. But it's Molly. What role she was? She was the absent mother, the mother that was never there, and didn't really take care of the kid because of necessity or whatever. I was raised by a single mother. I know what that's like. And both the girls actually shared that because they were kind of wayward, alone, unsupervised. And then in the end, by the end, it was too late. That crazy scream that goes right down your spine is really a culmination of all that guilt put into that one, all those years of guilt put into that one outburst and of horror.
Right there, you, ma'am. Question was in regards to why one girl's kind of a believer and one girl's not religiously, and where you stand and your own beliefs between your two films.
Maureen was a believer in the book, so I didn't invent that. I actually didn't push it as much as I could have because there was a lot of scenes when she actually went to church and sat, and Diana came with her and so on. I'm not really religious in any way, so. In some ways I am, but not deeply.
You, sir, you have another question. I can't wait to hear it. You were working in a budget range of $13 to $15 million. How much studio oversight is there in such a budget range?
I had full-on freedom for shooting it without any contract or anything like that.
So you didn't have like a contractual final cut, but you had full-on freedom?
No, I had full-on freedom to shoot it. They were both great.
You're working on a lot of great projects. I just would love to talk about them for a brief second. Louis Lowry's Newbery Award-winning novel, The Giver. It's kind of futuristic sci-fi. Could you talk about that for a second and tell us like what attracted you to the project and what the status of it is?
The Giver is not mine anymore.
Okay.
It was bought from under me. I was Jeff Bridges and I were developing this thing, and it's been in Jeff's family for about 10 years, and he's held the rights. And I wrote the screenplay to it, which I think still to this day is the best thing I've ever written.
I'm scared to hear the end of this horror story. Who bought it? What happened?
Well, it's not. Maybe it'll turn out okay, but the studio felt it was too dark. You know, the way I wrote it, which is actually really, for those of you who know the book is pretty dark, and they wanted to make. They just got scared at that budget range. We need to appeal to kids. We can't be doing this. So
What budget range was it?
Probably about 35, 40. It's a futuristic society, so we would have to build some sort of a. It's a very amazing book, actually. It's one of the best young adult novels ever written. I think one of the most popular. And that's my baby. I love that thing. And
is there any chance that they'll use any remnant of your script?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. They just took it. They paid a lot of money to Lois, and they took it away, and now it's at Warner Brothers, and I have no idea what they're doing with it.
Ouch. Hopefully there's a better answer on this one. At one point I know you were attached to a remake of Phelan.
Yep, that's still going.
Jose Rivera wrote the screenplay. All right. Give us the pitch on that. Explain to our audience what it is. And
it's a Korean movie, which is actually very similar to this in a way that because there's nothing supernatural there. It's just more like coincidences and things like that. It's a beautiful film that starts out as a mafia story and turns into one of the most poignant and beautiful and transcending love stories that I've ever seen in a movie. It's a beautiful Korean movie.
What's the status of the project?
We're casting. So there's
Great.
There's 3 or 4 things that are kind of always on the burner.
One of them, I'm guessing, is Song of Names with Jeffrey Kane. Is that correct?
Song of Names we're casting as well.
Give us
a Holocaust movie. It's going to be
a lot of fun.
Going to try and bring it in under 90 minutes.
Could you figure out a way to do less tragedy in the Holocaust film?
Yeah, I'm going to try. Yeah.
So what's the plot line of it?
I think a guy should trip on the way into the gas chamber and do a pratfall.
Yeah, add the comedy.
Yeah. I can say that.
Sorry. So what's the pitch?
I'm a Nazi.
What's the pitch? What's the pitch?
The pitch is it's about a little boy grows up in Poland and before the war, and he gets sent away. He's a violin prodigy. He gets sent away to England to a great violin teacher, and he ends up living with his family while his family that he left behind perishes in Poland. So he finds faith. It's actually all about the Jewish faith. He finds faith because the Song of Names is the song that the cantor would sing, the names of the dead, essentially. And it's a very incredibly moving piece that Jeffrey Kane wrote. He wrote Constant Gardener, and I think he's an amazing writer, amazing script.
The one that's most talked about lately would be, I believe you came on to replace Randall Wallace on Atlas Shrugged, the Ayn Rand novel. Is that still going? Is that still correct?
That's still very going. Yeah, we're planning to shoot in the fall, possibly with Angelina Jolie.
I love how you have these 3 things casting at once. By the way,
you have to. In this world, you have to. It's like in the circus when you put the plates on sticks and you run around and you spin them, and then one gets really slow and you run over there and spin that one. Because if you just have one thing and you're holding it, it just almost never happens. Or it happens, or you wait and forever. So the trick is to have as many things that you would love to do all at once, and you wouldn't be sad if any one of them came true. And then ultimately it's like you have more chips to put on the roulette table.
How tough was it to get into an adaptation like so difficult of Atlas Shrugged? Because it's a very famous book and has a hell of a following.
Yeah, I know. It was very hard. Actually, the book is 1,100 pages, and it's very dry in the sense that it's a philosophy that I'm not really a big proponent of. So I had to find a door into this emotionally in order to write about it, because I can't just write about something. And my thing was my Soviet Union existence, and how Ayn Rand also had a Soviet Union existence. In 1924, she escaped, and I escaped in 1977. But it's the same thing. It's that collective, instead of individualism. And I fully believe in individualism. There's a lot of things that Ayn Rand writes about I don't believe in, but that I do.
What kind of a time length would you expect for such a film? I mean, I know you haven't shot it, but how long was your screenplay for
right
an
now
11?
it's 155. So
Really?
Yeah,
That's
155
great.
pages, which is, it's manageable at least to a certain extent. And it still kind of holds up, I think.
So do you think it would be time length like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie?
Yeah, probably just under 3.
Great.
That's my guess. I mean, they want to make it shorter, obviously, and I think it'll be a process, of whittling it down and still trying to keep this story.
And adding more comedy, of course. Yeah. There you go. Well, you've been very generous with your time.
Yeah.
Give it up again for director Vadim Perelman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for staying.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to director Vadim Perelman for spending time with us to chat about his new film, Life Before Her Eyes. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software, because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, senior editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.